I never thought starting a true crime podcast, I'd be sitting down speaking to a former Miss Australia.
Well, it's your lucky day, Gary.
You a wag, a bikie wag, is that, or an old lady?
An old lady, love that term. And, I was strangled, I was shot at, a lot of really violent stuff went on, which I've worked through. And the first grenade came in, and that was a death tech grenade, and it hit me. And I didn't think in a million years it was a grenade or that it was the police. They had cameras in our house, trackers on vehicles, diggers digging up our property. When things were good, they were very good. When things were bad, they were very, very bad.
Today, I spoke to former Miss Australia Felicia Djamirze. You might think, how and why did a former Miss Australia find herself on a podcast called I Catch Killers? I wondered that too. But there was something in Felicia's DNA that attracted her to the bad guys. We talked about her life, growing up with immigrant parents, supporting an alcoholic father, and how she was attracted to the bright lights of King's Cross. Felicia tells us what it was like being a bikie wag, living with a bikie who became addicted to and was cooking methamphetamines, also being chased around the house with a loaded shotgun, being strangled, and a whole lot more. We also talked about the high life she was living, where money was no object, designer clothes and accessories, along with flash restaurants. That was the first relationship, but she wasn't finished with the bad guys. Her next partner was also a drug dealer, and that relationship led to a world completely unravelling. She was severely injured in a tactical police raid, arrested and charged. Felicia also told me why she has a tattoo that says, "Fuck the police," and what she is doing now. It's an interesting chat for sure. Felicia Djamirze, welcome to I Catch Killers.
Thanks for having me, Gary.
Did you ever think when you were a partner of a member of an outlaw motorcycle gang that you'd be sitting down having a chat with a former cop?
Definitely not. Definitely not. That was probably the last thing I would have expected. But a lot of things that have happened in my life have been very unexpected. So I always say, you know what, expect the unexpected.
It's funny how life turns out. I never thought starting a true crime podcast, I'd be sitting down speaking to a former Miss Australia. So,
well, it's your lucky day, Gary.
Well, there you go.
I'm just
you
joking.
never know what's around the corner. Hey, I've spent the weekend reading your book, Accessory, and I've got to say, it's an interesting read. Very raw.
Yeah.
How did it feel writing the book?
It was pretty cathartic, to be honest. Yeah. It was difficult. It was more challenging mentally and emotionally than what I thought it would be initially, but I think that's like most tasks that you take on, especially something you haven't done before.
Yeah.
See, I've never written a memoir before. I do some writing, but not to that extent. So it was very grueling and very emotionally taxing, and a lot of things came to the forefront of my mind that I hadn't touched on or thought about for years. There was also a lot of things in there that I felt I had dealt with, but when we actually spoke about it and Erin and I sat down and started writing it together, I thought, hang on a minute, there's still some work to be done. Some grief work, some trauma work. There was still a lot of things that were unresolved for me. So I'm happy I got the privilege and opportunity to kind of go through that process again and work on all those unresolved issues.
Well, it makes you take account of everything that's happened in your life, doesn't it? When you're sitting down and writing a memoir, playing it all out. I got to say, I started reading. I wasn't sure where it was going to take me, but I felt sympathy for your father, Yuri.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we'll talk about it, but he battled alcohol, but. I think in the book it covered his demise. He was a strong, capable man, and then what he was reduced to because of his addiction to alcohol. Mm. But also another interesting aspect was, and I've seen this before with friends and people I've met in this environment, with parents, immigrant parents. Mm-hmm. Sometimes the trauma's passed down, and people don't realise. And you look at the life that they come, and your parents from Russia, and what they went through to settle over here. It's quite an amazing story, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. And you find that with a lot of families who've come to Australia that there is that intergenerational trauma that exists there. And also on my mother's side, my mother has an Indigenous background, and there's intergenerational trauma there from my grandmother being on a mission, the stolen generation. There's so many different aspects that are passed down that you don't really think about or realize until you do that life inventory and you take stock of those events and how they've impacted your childhood and then you into the future.
Well, it passes on to generations, and I don't think we fully appreciate that because sometimes we think it's happened in the past. Your life was different. You grew up in a different environment, but the family structure and the emotions are shaped by the environment in which your parents grew up and their parents before them.
Completely true. And even with my partner, Dean, his father was an orphan from Italy and came over here on a boat. And there's a lot of trauma in obviously being an orphan and coming to a new country on a boat and then being adopted out to, two Aussie parents, and you're from a completely different country. And there was a lot of things that went on in Dean's father's childhood that were very similar to Yuri's childhood. And then Dean's father actually ended up in Pentridge prison. And then the intergenerational stuff comes down, and then Dean ended up in prison, and then I ended up with charges. So you can kind of see on a really, really basic level how there's that trickle-down effect. And I will never say it's an excuse, because I don't really believe in excuses, but it's a reason. And we have to know the reason behind why things happen to be able to correct, change, solve.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. I honestly believe we've got to understand what the root cause of the problem is quite often. I'm also going to ask you why you've got "fuck the police" tattooed, but that was in your book. I haven't.
Can you read Russian, Gary?
No, I can't. But a very reliable interpreter, as in yourself, interpreted it. But we'll get into that. Maybe you'll change your mind. Maybe you'll get another tattoo. But look, you've lived a life. But I highs, lows. You've seen it all. So let's just sort of break it down. Tell us about your childhood, where you grew up.
I grew up in a housing commission, and it was a very multicultural cul-de-sac that we lived in, and it felt like a community back in those days. The house that I grew up in, Anita Cobby's killers, the Murphy brothers' parents and them had lived in that house prior to that. They moved out and we moved in. So that paints a picture of the socioeconomical environment and what it was like in those days. So that's where I grew up, basically.
Yeah, I it jumped out at me. I made some notes about that, living in the house that the Murphy brothers grew up. And for people, and I'm sure everyone's heard of the Anita Cobby murder, it was a horrendous situation, and the Murphy brothers, 3 of them, were charged with that murder. You always described the house as feeling slightly haunted.
Correct. Even before I knew, because I was quite young, obviously, and I only found out that was their house and the context in and around that when I was about 8 or 9 years old. So even before I knew that there was a past with that house, I could always feel there was some kind of energy in the house that was a heavy energy, basically. Yeah, look,
we're delving into areas that I don't fully understand, but I know sometimes an environment can carry something. I know if you go into a closed down prison or even a cell, you can feel the pain that's gone in that environment. So
a lot of people say that. They say that it feels like the walls can talk to them, the energy that's coming off that. Well, we believe in Wi-Fi signals, right? So anything's possible.
I've got an open mind to things, but I found it interesting. Also, living in a cul-de-sac, you had a lot of your relatives living in there. 5 houses in 10 houses, and they were your relatives. That must have been a fun environment to grow up with cousins and
it was
different things.
Chaotic, fun, and great. I think that a lot of families will say that your cousins are your first best friends usually if you've got cousins, so you grow up together, you play together on the weekends. So it was great in that respect to have everyone quite close knit. And I think too the family was very used to living close together, because in Donetsk, which is now a city of the Ukraine, prior former Soviet Union, so they lived in a unit, and my grandmother raised 11 children in this unit, and they were very used to living very close together.
Literally on top of each other.
So if anything, that was in the same street would feel a lot for some families.
Yeah.
But that was, normal to even just all be in the same unit, all in the same house. And I think a lot of people from European or, more ethnic backgrounds are kind of used to that close-knit living environment. Yeah. It's a cultural thing. Yeah.
It has its benefits, but doesn't it? There's the shared parenting. Like if you're up to no good, your uncle or your auntie will
I was going to say the cooking, the shared cooking of the good food. And,
I'm sure it went down in that cul-de-sac. How would you describe yourself as a child?
Apparently, I was shy, which is really hard to believe. Anyone that knows me,
yeah, tell us
you've
another
read the book.
Yeah.
I was quite shy. I was a well-behaved child. Me and my mother always joked that I was a very good child, but a bit of a, I guess a naughty adult or adolescent and adult.
you had to break out sooner or later.
I had to, yeah.
Maybe you should have got it out of your system in kindergarten.
I
might have been an easier path. Your parents' relationship, and I see you're still close with your mum. Your mum's come down here today, and she's exactly how I pictured her from reading the book.
Yeah.
But you had a tough time with your father, and a decent man, but just was carrying some pain. Would that be fair to say?
Most definitely, and I think if you acknowledge that your parent is a human. And they've experienced trauma, that it is understandable how they parent you in a certain way. They're doing the best that they can with the knowledge that they have.
Yeah.
And Yuri grew up in poverty. There was a shortage of food in Russia. He was in a kid's home. There was some abuse that went on in the kid's home. There was an incident where him and one of his friends took an abuser out into the woods, and Yuri was on one end and his friend was on the other, and they broke the abuser's back up against a tree.
Yeah.
And they left him there to die. So if you are grappling with those kinds of traumas and you don't know how to cope in any other way than drinking or doing drugs, then that's how you're going to cope. And I think that society sees coping mechanisms quite differently. So you've got workaholics, you're given a gold star.
Yeah.
Or you've got your more clandestine type of coping mechanisms that no one knows about. But when it's drugs or alcohol, it's very overtly obvious. So they're just coping the best way that they know how, and it's an illness and it needs to be treated as such.
Yeah, and for a kid it's hard because you look at your kids, look at your parents to start with as heroes. They're Superman and Superwoman.
Yeah.
They can do everything. And then as you got older, you started to see the failings. It was quite sad when you're talking about when he'd travel overseas and you'd come to pick him up at the airport, and he was a no-show because he got on the drink wherever he was and wasn't allowed on the plane.
Yeah, happened so many times, and it was heartbreaking and devastating, and that caused some issues for me, but I didn't realise it at the time. That was my norm at the time. It's only when you get older and you reflect back and you look at certain circumstances and things in your life that you realise how these things have impacted you. Yeah.
There was a period in time, and I'm not sure how old you were when you travelled overseas to where your father grew up and with your mother. He didn't come. He wasn't invited, but you and your mum
went. He was drunk.
you and your mum went over there. Where was that, and how did that change your view on life?
That was to Donetsk, the coal mining town that's now in the Ukraine.
Yeah.
We caught a overnight train from Kiev to Donetsk, and that was an experience. And I talk about traveling on that train overnight. It was a lot of drunk Russian men who couldn't aim. So the toilet was just like, I'm not. You can. I'm painting a picture.
You've created a picture.
And I thought, come on, guys, can you just aim? So it was quite a wild train ride, to be honest. But it was a great experience that me and my mum got to have together with my auntie and my cousin. And we went to stay with my auntie and my cousin's parents, well, my auntie's parents. Yeah. And her father actually fought in the war. And he at one stage had Goebbels' briefcase in his possession. Okay. So I mentioned that in the book as well. So there's a lot of things in there that integrate back into history and the war, and also there's some Australian history in there. Yep. There's I think when people see the cover, it's quite deceiving because inside the book it goes a lot deeper into a lot of historical things, and also I talk about trauma, mental health, and a lot of women's issues as well.
Yeah.
So it's a lot deeper than what you see on the cover. So I'm hoping people pick it up thinking one thing and leave thinking a completely different
Yeah,
thing.
well, I didn't know what to expect, and I'm reading it, preparing for this, but I've got very interested in Yuri's life and Brenda and how they're related.
Yuri's a whole book on his
yeah,
own.
you could.
Yuri's a whole Netflix series.
Yeah. World records, flying planes around the world. Anyway, too much to cover, but an interesting character. And one thing that came through the whole time, and we're going to talk about your relationship with Cam and when that was going bad. Yuri stepped up as a father and said, "We can make this problem go away." And he wasn't talking about taking him out for dinner. He was going to go.
Just taking him out.
Literally. So, okay. You also identified like a lot of your family were successful in different fields, and you had your beauty, and that's where you thought, okay, well, I'm going to trade on what I've got there, and you got into a beauty contest. Yeah. Talk us through that, because I'm not an expert in that field, surprisingly. So how did that come about?
That's okay. I didn't expect you would be, Gary.
Yeah. Oh, I can't believe you won that. Yeah. I've got notes but tell us about that.
In regards to that, I always have seen myself just as a normal person, and my friends and family or people that know me quite closely know that that's how I am. But I started to notice that other people were perceiving me as being attractive, and I could leverage on that.
Yeah.
So that's what I did when I was younger. I did leverage on that, and I thought, okay, if I can enter this contest and I can win a trip overseas, this is a great way for me to get out of Blacktown, see the world, travel, have my hair and makeup done, and have a great time. And it was also a very different era back then when I was doing it, and the social climate has changed a lot when it comes to pageants, when it comes to women, when it comes to the way women are perceived and objectified. It hasn't come that far, but there has been some significant changes in this period, in the past 10 years. So it was really a little bit more, I guess, socially acceptable to leverage your looks in that way back then.
There was an innocence to it, wasn't it? No one thought anything of it like Miss Australia or Miss Gold Coast, or
it was very normalised.
Yeah, what people would do. The first contest you went in, you won $1,000 or something.
Yeah,
was that,
I was underage and it was in a pub and I was in a bikini.
Cool.
Oh no, sorry, that was a different contest.
Oh right.
The contest you're talking about could be the dancing competition at Channel V.
Right.
And I took the $1,000 overseas when I travelled overseas.
Okay.
Yes, no, I wasn't in a bikini. They're just a crop top and a skirt.
Okay. Dancing in a bikini, underage. That we might have taken the podcast somewhere I didn't expect. So what were the titles that you won?
So I won 3 different titles. So Miss Tourism Queen Australia, Miss Australia International, and Miss Lumiere Australia. And I got to go overseas on all 3 occasions, which was great.
Right. Yeah. So that sort of set you up in a lot of regards, I would imagine, at that age and winning contests like that.
And I made a lot of really good friends, some of which I still speak to today nearly on a daily basis. We're on WhatsApp, we're talking. And even though it's been, 10 or so years, we have a really good long distance relationship, girls from other countries, and it's really lovely to know. So if you travel, you've always got somewhere to stay, somebody local to show you around, and somebody that you trust and that you have a good time with. So that part of it, the friendship aspect and the connection aspect, has been I guess priceless.
Yeah, there was see, my perception of it was, I thought everyone in those type of contests were straighty 180s and chaperones and all that. But you broke out when you were over, was it the US with someone
in Chicago with Miss California.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
There was a rule that you had to stay in the hotel, I think from 9 p.m. onwards, and if you got caught leaving the hotel, you were disqualified. So myself and Miss California and the Miss from the UK said, stuff this, we're going out. So we left and we went to a nightclub in Chicago, and it was floor to ceiling glass. You could see the whole city. It was amazing. Yeah. And we just had the best time. We're dancing on tables. They were free pouring vodka into our mouth. Like, it was just, I thought, this is wonderful. And although I did have some wild experiences in the cross, that was pretty up there. The Chicago scene was pretty cool. And everyone was saying, be careful, it's Chicago, all the spiel. I didn't feel unsafe. I was having a great time. I thought it was great.
Did that give you the taste of the bright lights? And
No, I already tasted it before then.
Already got the taste.
Yeah.
I think, and I'm not sure what trip it was, but you also auditioned for Playboy.
That's the same trip.
Okay, I'll do the topless, but I'm not doing the bottomless.
No, you got to pay for that.
Yeah, okay. So that was the line that you drew there.
Yeah.
What was it like auditioning? Because like Playboy, Penthouse, or whatever, those were big back in the day.
Again, the social climate's changed. It was really, really big back then. And Playmate of the Year got quite a large sum of money, a car, and then contracts or a modelling contract, so on and so forth through there. You can just see from the example of like Pamela Anderson and how her career kind of progressed from there onwards. So I thought that was a viable option. I didn't feel I was tall enough to be a traditional model, I had to be more of a commercial model.
Yeah.
And actually my mum came with me to the Playboy test shoot.
Oh, well, that makes acceptable.
So I felt quite, safe. She was actually there in the room with me. So I was supervised, I guess, so to say. Yeah.
I bet they're all life's experiences, aren't they?
Oh, yeah, they are. And that's something I'd probably do now. Then again, no, I'm kidding.
When did you start getting the attraction to the city nightlife? And you were doing the Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday recovery session in the city. Yeah. Talk us about that. What attracted you to that lifestyle?
Fun. It was just fun, and it was escape from reality, basically. At the time, I didn't probably acknowledge so much that it was escapism, but when you're there and you're around friends, you're dancing, you're drinking, doing coke, whatever it is that you're doing, right? You're not thinking about, your traumas. You're not thinking about your everyday worries. You're not thinking about life stuff. You're having a mental break. You're basically numbing out and you're having a good time. And that can be quite an addictive thing. Everyone wants to feel like that all the time, but that's not realistic. That's not what life is like.
It's hard to sustain it.
Oh yeah, it's unsustainable. There's no pace in that kind of coping mechanism, So back then when I was young, I wanted to be away from Blacktown, in the Cross, having a good time, because at home my father was, his health was ailing. He was an addict and he was quite verbally abusive, and it was a unpleasant environment to be in. So I said, I'm out of here, basically. And that's kind of how it all eventuated.
A breakaway. And you started at a young age, like you're getting in with your fake IDs and
fake passport.
Fake passport. You had it all happening. You got to meet a lot of the characters in there?
I did. Yeah, a lot of the characters in there. And again, also from families that came from overseas. So you can see how there's the intergenerational stuff there as well. That's quite interesting when you look at it in that way. Yeah.
Looking for something. Now, you said, and I'm interpreting from the book, that you still realise that you've got your looks and you could trade on that in that environment, like the dumb blokes coming up and buying you drinks and I when I say dumb blokes, like let's have sympathy for them, but they thought they were in with a chance and you would leverage that?
Well, in saying that, I wouldn't call them dumb. I would say chivalry, and that's died a lot in this day and age.
Yeah.
I think that it is lovely when a man offers you a drink or a man takes you for dinner and offers to pay for your dinner and shows you that they're courting you, they're wanting to impress you, they've got the ability to look after you, even though you have the ability to look after yourself.
Yeah.
Because obviously majority of women can buy their own dinner.
Yeah.
But it's not about that, is it? It's about the courting and about respect. So I think in those days, if you're speaking to a woman and you didn't buy her a drink, it's pretty embarrassing.
Yeah.
I think it's still embarrassing now.
I think it would be still embarrassing.
But there's been a lot of shifts and change in the way that dynamic is framed in society.
Yeah.
But I'm still a big believer in,
old-fashioned values along those lines.
Yeah.
What about the drugs? Did that ever get hold of you? Like, did you become dependent on the drugs, or is that you felt you had control?
I felt I had control.
Yeah.
I don't feel I was dependent on it. It was recreational for me, but it quite easily could have become more than that.
Yeah.
Depending on what was going on in my life, depending on the people you have around you. I've always had a really good support network in my mother and in my sister.
Yep.
And I think if I didn't have those things could have been differently, because there's a big genetic component when it comes to addiction.
Yeah.
And my mother always had fears around the fact that because I'm Yuri's daughter, that I could have issues with addiction. And that's accurate. So accurate, and it's something you've really got to be on top of if that runs in your family. So you've got to learn really good coping mechanisms. You've got to create a community around you that can support you instead of going to that. You've got something healthy to gravitate towards in the hard times.
It can make the difference, isn't it?
Yeah.
Like I'm sure your mum kept a sort of tight rein as tight as she could.
When I was
you.
on bail, yes, she did.
Stay
home.
Well, I'm surprised it led to an arrest. But okay, we've got to ask, and I want you to explain. You're not speaking for every woman, but what is the attraction to the bad guys for you?
I wouldn't say that I'm attracted to them because they're perceived as bad. I don't think anyone's inherently good or bad. We've all got, two sides.
That's just a terminology. The bad boys.
The stereotypical bad boy. It's because we grew up in the same shit pit usually.
Yeah.
And we've got a lot in common. I feel comfortable around people that have grown up rough like I have.
Yep.
We see the world from a similar perspective, and we're not only in the same book, we're on the same page. Whereas nothing against people who are, again, a stereotypical coin term as straight 180. Yeah. We just look at life differently because our experiences are so far detached from each other. Right. So I have dated men that you would say are, I guess, let's say,
I've got a head in here. You're straighty 180 dating scene. Yeah, so I know what you're talking about, but yes. I'm interested in that my career within the police and even my life outside the police. I constantly see the bad boys, and the bad boys is just terminology. We're not even dissecting what is actually bad or good about them. But I saw so many women with the so-called bad boys, and my take on it was, some thought they could change them. Like, okay, this is a rough diamond, but I'm going to polish him up, and this dude is going to be the perfect gentleman once I finish with him.
Ladies, don't bother trying to polish the diamond. Get the diamonds as gifts.
look at life theories. But you obviously had an attraction, and you explained it that way, that you could understand where they came from. There was shared similarities. And also, I think they, and you mentioned this in the book, they like having you as their partner. Look how I've succeeded. That was their status symbol, having you as a partner. Is that fair to say, or am I selling it too short?
That often is the case, and I think you can say in traditional society, not just in the gang world, that your partner is an extension of you.
Yep.
And this is how it's seen. The partner is an extension of you, and if they look a certain way, they have certain things, they're wearing certain things, it elevates your status. Yeah. If that makes sense. Yeah. In that, and then hence the name of the book, Accessory.
Well, I interpreted that was a
play on words.
Play on words with what you were doing. That attraction took you into a relationship. It was a long-term relationship with Cam. Are you happy to talk about the relationship there? Yes. He was, when you first got with him, I think he was a nom for a bikie club. We've had enough bikies on here, and we've talked about it enough to understand.
So what's your attraction to bad boys then, Gary, if you've had a lot of bikies on here?
Well,
you tell me.
I had to catch him when I was in the cops. That was a strong attraction, but no.
Did they buy you a drink or what?
I've got a lot of friends in that world, and there's professional differences when I was in the cops, obviously.
Of course, yeah.
I say this, and I don't want this to be misinterpreted, but I respected the code that they lived by when they truly lived by their code, and we'll talk about that. But I understood it. I mightn't agree with it, but I understood the code, and they're putting themselves up there. This is what we are. We're outlaws. You're the cops. We don't like you. I can respect living by their code. I just don't necessarily agree with some of the things in their code. So I don't mind them individually. Yeah, you sit down, have a chat, and it's amazing. The lives that they've lived. I think you touched on it too, that a lot of them have been abused and this isn't. The information I'm getting from them, a lot of them had been abused. So when you see the big tough guy, covered in tattoos that like the "don't fuck with me" look about them. A lot of it is that bravado built up because they're never going to be a victim again, and that saddens me that people have to that's the way they live their life. But I understand it.
And then that's further reinforced in prison because you have to have that bravado, because if you show any vulnerability, you'll be picked on.
Yeah.
And then that kind of transfers into the behaviour in society as well. So if you're not seen as vulnerable or weak, that not that being vulnerable is weak, I just want to point that out. But if you're perceived as such, there's always a threat that you'll be attacked or victimised again.
Yeah.
Like you were when you were a child.
They can smell fear, and you can't display that, or you will be preyed upon in jail and also in the bikie clubs. So, okay, what was your steps into there? So, is it fair when you were going out with Cam that you were a wag, a bikie wag? Is that, or an old lady?
An old lady. Love that term. Well, I'm getting older now, so.
But it's an old lady in that it is a term that's used, the old term. Lady, and that tends to indicate you're a partner of a particular bikie. So, how did you meet Cam?
We lived in similar areas,
Yep.
so we had friends of friends, and we kind of just grew up in the same scene, basically. And that's where I say, it just becomes normalised that dating somebody in a club or that goes into a club, or somebody that commits crime or deals drugs or goes to jail, it was seen as quite normal in my social circle and with me and my friends growing up. Quite a few of my girlfriends that I grew up with had also had similar experiences to me. Yeah. So it was very normalised. So it didn't feel foreign.
Well, you are a product of your environment, and I do understand what you're saying. So it wasn't sort of, you've never seen that side of the world and you've stepped in and gone, wow. You understood.
It wasn't
where they
a
came
big
from.
deal. It wasn't like, oh my goodness, you're joining a club. Do you know what I mean? Like it was, okay.
Okay, so you started going out with him. He started to rise up the ranks.
Quite quickly, yeah. Very likable, charismatic, kind, generous person, and also physically strong, tall.
Yep.
Good sense of humour. Got along with everyone. So that worked to his advantage. Very good standover man, and I think that's why he was able to move up quite quickly. Yeah.
How were you treated in the club, in the social events and different things when you got together with the club? Was there
very well?
Yep.
Very well. Yeah.
How did you navigate your way through that?
Again, just normalised. Yeah, I was friends with all the other wives and girlfriends, and we'd go out and we'd have dinner together, and it was actually like our own little crew, so to speak, and a camaraderie in a sense, because we all would have quite similar experiences, and those experiences are very outside the norm for your regular person, and not something you'd speak about with probably other people other than the wives and the girlfriends that are in similar situations to you. So. Yeah, I actually was treated quite well within that scene and that circle, and I enjoyed being in that scene and that circle in that time until Cam developed an addiction, and then everything changed after that. Yeah,
talk us through that, because as described in your book, the Cam that you first got with had a lot of things going for him, and then the slow deterioration when the addiction came in. And he was a good methamphetamines cook too, which endeared him to the world that he was living in as well.
Yes, correct.
So what changes did you see in him?
Anyone that knows somebody who has an addiction and has seen somebody from the inception of that addiction until when they hit rock bottom, will know that it's like the lights are on but no one's home. Yeah. And you pine for that person that existed prior, before the addiction, because it slowly eats away at their personality, at their soul, and they become unrecognisable, basically. They're not the person you fell in love with, and they're not the person that you kind of agreed to date or go out with, because the behaviours change.
Yeah. I've seen people that are addicted to ice and other drugs. They've lost their soul. You look into their eyes and there's nothing but behind the eyes. I know that, like sitting in interview rooms with people or just talking to people that have got that addiction, and there's just a big black hole there, isn't there?
Yeah, because the pain that they've got within themselves the emotion that is there that needs to be dealt with is so heavy and painful that they can't face it. And in order to not face it, they have to numb out with drugs, alcohol, etc. There's always pain there. There's always, like we said earlier, there's always a root cause there.
What we've sort of hit the low points of that relationship. What were the high points, like the lifestyle that you were living with him? Explain that.
When things were good, they were very good. When things were bad, they were very, very bad. So I guess it was like a roller coaster.
Yeah.
It was feast or famine a lot of the times. But the famine was because of the addiction. Money would go missing. And that's when I realised, hey, this is becoming a serious problem here.
Yeah. Is that something you're like that? Some people go through their life flatlining. Live the suburban life, the white picket fence, 2 kids, dog, that type of stuff. Are you looking for the highs and lows? Is that something that you're attracted to?
My life is pretty interesting and exciting now, but in different ways.
Yeah.
So, writing the book and the work that I do as well, the therapy work that I do, I'm always learning.
Yeah.
Always meeting new people. So it has its highs and lows now, but in a very different way. So yes, I do like that. I don't think I could ever live your mundane white picket fence life. I would become very bored.
Yep.
And that's probably my idea of hell, maybe.
Yeah.
Some people's dream, but my idea of hell.
I think people, like, you look at other people, everyone lives their life in the path that they choose, and that suits some people.
Yeah.
Other people, it would be a slow death.
Yeah, I like to always learn something new. Like I said, meet new people, travel. I traveled to the Philippines. I visited the women in Manila City Prison. I like to go and do things that enrich your knowledge.
Yep.
Things that you can learn to bring back to your country and advise on, whether that's programs, policies, etc. I like to do things where I can learn things and then give that knowledge back.
How did you, just a sidetrack, how did you get into the women's Philippine prison in Manila? That would have been an interesting experience.
It was really, really interesting, and it was a privilege to be allowed into their living space. So I thank them for that, and I went in there, and actually Brenda, my mother, came to the prison as well, and we went into the dormitory, and I explained how I got in there to begin with. Was I spoke with the warden, and I explained the work that I do here and the advocacy that I do for women who have conviction histories. And I said, I'd like to come and do some cross-cultural knowledge sharing with you and see what are you guys doing that we're not, that works, and vice versa. And let's sit down and let's, share ideas and share knowledge so it's an enriching experience for both. And they said, yeah, great, please come along, because I'm a trauma therapist, as you know. So come along. Anyway, I went there. They invited me into the dorm, and I would say, I know that the people listening can't see the size of the studio, but just for your purposes, so double the size of the studio, you'll have 60 women.
Okay, so we're looking at a room probably 8 foot by 6 foot here, roughly, or 3 to 4 metres long, 2 to 3 metres wide. Yeah,
so not much space at all.
Yeah.
And bunk beds, one on top of the other. And so very close living quarters.
Yeah.
And some of the women did not have mattresses. They were sleeping on bunk beds with just a cardboard sheet. And although that was the conditions, they were allowed to see their families daily, except for the days where there was mandatory learning and jobs training, which is 2 days a week. And they were allowed to see their children for basically unlimited hours in comparison to what happens in Australia.
Yeah.
They had a coffee shop where the men make the coffee for the families, the male prisoners on the other side. They come and they work in the coffee shop. So they make the coffee and the snacks for their children when they come. There's a great playground there. And I said to the warden and the nurse and the other staff there, and also to the women that were in there, what happens when you leave prison? And they were like, what do you mean? Because in Australia we have situation where a lot of women, or people in general, as you would know, they leave prison and they don't have anywhere to go. They've lost connection with family. They don't have anywhere to live. And it just fuels the cycle of going back inside because they don't have that support network. And they looked at me like I was speaking another language, probably because I was. But
that was very, very perceptive of you.
They were looking at me like, what is she talking about? They said, what do you mean? We just go back home to our families.
Yeah.
And it made sense because they're allowed to keep the connection with family. They're not moved far away. They can see their children every day. They can see their parents every day. So that's something that they do really, really well, is the maintaining your connection with support networks. So when they come out, the family's able to support. So
it does make a lot of sense, like prison
it's not
reform.
rocket science, is
No,
it?
it's not. I think one of the Norwegian countries look after the family when the prisoners are in there to make sure the families are looked after outside, because they know the importance of having a stable family for the prisoner to come back to.
And especially in the sense of when we've got children who are impacted by a parent who's incarcerated, we know that if we look at the stats, I'm not going to go into that, but if we look at the stats, there's a higher likelihood of that child growing up and being engaged in crime if they've had a parent or both parents incarcerated. So looking at myself, I've had charges. My father was in prison. My partner's father was in prison. So even just within, my close-knit circle, I can see the intergenerational stuff. So if you're looking after the children that have parents incarcerated, that's future crime prevention right there. So, and that's something that can be implemented now that we're not doing. Look after the kids, look after the mums, because the mums look after the kids. That's our future. That's what we've got to nurture.
No, well, and most people that go into prison, and this is where I think the public don't fully appreciate, they're going to get out. So it's how you treat them inside is going to dictate how they come out, what they're like when they come out. So,
yes, and I think that the person going into prison goes into court, they get sentenced and they say, okay, yes, I'm going to do my 5 years or my 10 years or whatever it might be. So they're agreeing to that part of it. But I don't feel like corrections is keeping up their end of the bargain, because people are coming out worse. There's no correcting going on in corrections. There needs to be better access to health. There needs to be better access to education, skills training, employment training, and more connection to family promoted.
Yeah. No, well, breaking those things like education, skills training, so they've got something to come to, and the family connection, it is important. I know corrective services are trying to implement changes in that regards.
I'll tell you exactly what you need to be doing.
Yeah, well, have a look at Macquarie Correctional Centre and a few other prisons. I'm talking New South Wales here. That adopted a new approach, and I think it's something worthwhile, definitely worthwhile. And this is not me sitting here as a bleeding heart softie. I'm an ex-cop, so I take a hard line on crime.
I don't think either of us are softies, Gary.
No, well, just to clarify that.
Just to clarify.
Yeah, we're tough. Yeah. Getting back to Cam, the deterioration, it became quite confronting for you. Some of the things that took place. Do you want to happy to talk us through that journey?
I'm happy to talk through that. So there was a couple of incidents where I quite easily could have lost my life. And, I was strangled, I was shot at, a lot of really violent stuff went on, which I've worked through. And I speak about these experiences very openly in the book, because I believe it's important that if you can speak about these things, you should, for the people that cannot. And I don't know what the flow-on impacts will be for women who have been through similar situations, or potentially young women growing up that will read my book and say, oh, hang on a minute, I can see red flags now. I'm going to kind of, step away.
Yeah.
I need to have boundaries. I need to look after myself. I need to make sure that, X, Y, Z, maybe make them more perceptive or aware that these things do go on. But I think the main thing is that women don't feel alone in having had these experiences, because when these really violent things happen to you, you don't sit and imagine that there's X amount of other women out there who have been through a similar thing. It can be very lonely.
You're in isolation.
Yeah, so I'm hoping that this makes a lot of women feel as though you're not alone, or know that they're not alone, basically, because it can be very, very isolating to be in an abusive relationship. And a lot of the times too, for a long period of time, it's like a clandestine thing. They hide it from family and friends. It's too shameful to admit.
Well, that comes into it, and it's sad it comes into it, but it's like an embarrassment. And I suppose if this is a partner I selected, and look what's happening, and all the friends and family are probably sitting there going, We could have told you that.
Shame, self-blame, all
yeah.
of these things that come into it that aren't helpful.
Yeah.
You know.
But your experiences were, I think that there was one time a shop was let fire at the taxi, and another time you've been chased around by with him in a drug-fueled rage with a shotgun, and then strangled to the point where you passed out and ended up in hospital.
Yeah, I thought I was finished in that strangulation. I thought, this is it. This is the end. I thought, yeah.
What happened when you woke up? And
I woke up and I thought, fuck yeah, I'm alive. It was great.
Yeah.
I didn't think I was going to...
Well, that
Yes.
okay. Well, that's a bonus. You
Pleasant surprise.
always look on the bright side of life. Yeah.
Yeah.
You were concerned about leaving him because of the state of mind he was in at the time?
Yes, and access to weapons too had to be taken into consideration. And I don't think that's unique to the drug world or to the gangland world. I think that, you know, there's access to weapons even though we've got laws in place, etc. I think that a lot of women that aren't in that world still have to consider access to weapons as a risk factor when they're leaving, which is the most dangerous time. So I don't think I'm alone in that. It's just that probably, you know, in my circumstance, it was a shotgun as opposed to some other kind of weapon, you know.
Yeah, but there's always weapons in house. They don't have to be a gun to inflict the violence.
Yep.
But you reached out to his club and spoke to a senior member there and saying, help me, like this is what's going on.
I said he needs to go to rehab.
Yeah.
Because I was able to separate the person from the illness, and I knew that his addiction was, again, not an excuse, but it was the reason behind his behaviour, because the violence increased and the behaviours and the aggression increased so much as a result of the drug taking, and was a complete polar opposite to the person that I had met and I was with prior and that I entered a relationship with. And I always kind of hoped that that person would come back, and then I realised it wouldn't. So I really tried to implore them to put him into a rehabilitation facility for a period of time so he could get his head straight and have a chance at, you know, getting his health back, getting his life back. Whether we stayed together or not was irrelevant at that point for me. On a human level, I wanted him to get the medical help that he needed and the psychological help that he obviously needed as well.
How was that received when you took that to the club? It
was all a lot of yes, 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 and then not a lot of action. I think they tried to detox him themselves, which was futile. I know I tried to detox urine myself a couple of times at home. I do not recommend, a very dangerous thing to do. It needs to be under medical supervision. But I think also in some senses I would say that could have been to their advantage to have him, you know, addicted.
Yeah, well, he's dependent and they can point him in the
easier
direction.
To control.
He'll do anything.
Yeah.
How did the relationship actually come to an end then?
It ended when I left. So, look, it ended before that, but I had to be very careful in the way that I did decide to leave, because I did get Cam to leave, but he would return to the home. He ripped the door off the hinges on one occasion, and I had went out one night and I got home and he had crawled through my window and he was asleep in my bed. And this was after I
That's creepy.
Oh, yeah. And I just had to pretend that everything was okay because I didn't know what mood he was in. I didn't know whether he had a weapon under the blanket. I didn't know what was going to happen.
Yeah.
So I just acted normal, put on my pajamas and just laid in the bed and kind of just one eye open situation and waited till the morning. He got up in the morning and then he left.
Right.
Didn't say a word.
I suppose in your situation, because you knew he was cooking the drugs and all that, you didn't really have the option of ringing the cops either, did you?
No, and I never would.
Yeah.
I never would. I guess you would know, you know, there's a code in regards to that.
Yeah.
But I will say that domestic violence and club issues or whatever it might be, they're completely separate things and they never should be kind of piled together in one thing, you know, and people get called, oh, you're a dog if you call the cops.
Yeah, well, you can't.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But if somebody's bashing you or abusing you, they're not a man. And yeah, you know, it needs to be dealt with. You're not a dog. It needs to be dealt with. Real men don't hit women. So that needs to be kind of separated. But back then it was kind of all piled into one, and domestic violence wasn't on the forefront as much as what it is now in society.
Did you have blokes within the club that had the ticker to stand up to this? Like if something was going down, domestic violence, and just take him aside and sort him out?
Well, we try to deal with everything. We did try to deal with everything in-house, so to speak.
Yeah.
So it's a kind of street justice. It's a better way to deal with things. And yes, some people did go and visit him at his house, and he ran. And I was disappointed in that. I felt he should have just stayed, and then it would have been even.
Yeah, you said he didn't have the balls to even stand up and face it.
Didn't know he could run that fast. Jumped the fence and everything.
Fear kicks in that adrenaline.
That adrenaline, yeah.
So where and can we talk? And Yuri, your father's passed away, but I like the fact that the father that always had your back. And describe us how Yuri was going to. We touched on it earlier. How Yuri was going to fix the problem.
Yeah, well, Yuri said, we'll get rid of him, we'll knock him, and it doesn't matter because I'm dying anyway. But even if Yuri wasn't dying, he still would have been, keen to do it. So it became a problem because, like I said, I left, ripped the door off the hinges, comes into the window at night. We thought, where is this going to end? Where is this situation going to end? Am I ever going to be free of this person? And you always, after you've been strangled to the point where you think you're going to die and you end up unconscious and you're shot at, you're thinking, how much longer do I have, basically? So it was either me or him at that point. That's psychologically the point that I was at. And Yuri and I had a discussion about it, and we kind of planned what we were wanting to do. Then luckily we didn't have to, go through with that.
What eventually led to the breakup or the separation?
I decided to leave the area, and I went to central New South Wales.
Yep.
And kind of just hid out there where he couldn't find me for a while, and was hoping that he'd just kind of get over it or let go of it.
Did he get over it? Because part of the problem with an obsession and with the addiction is that, you're smiling and you're tough. You've lived a tough life, but if you got someone strangling you to the point where you end up in hospital, or someone running around with a loaded shotgun that's off his face and someone firing a shot, you must have had genuine concerns for are you going to survive this?
Oh, yeah, I did. I'm a pretty positive person. I always try and look at, the brighter side of things. Not that there's a bright side in that, but I always saw that there's hope and there's a way out and there's a way forward. No matter what's thrown at me, there's always a way forward, and I always push for that. But yes, I was genuinely concerned for my safety, and that's why I chose to remove myself from the situation, because the onus couldn't be on him to correct the situation of his behaviour, because he was not of sound mind. He's addicted and has access to weapons. So, and that aspect of things was solidified because I went and spoke to him after he had been arrested for something else.
Yep.
He ended up in prison, and I sat with him, and he said to me, I'm actually glad that I'm in here because I would have killed you. I would have killed myself and probably somebody else. So
that's chilling, isn't it?
Yeah, well, that means that removing myself from the situation was the right thing to do. But also, I had the privilege of being able to do that. A lot of women don't.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. What prompted you to go see him in prison, and how long since you'd spoke to him? Were you staying in contact with him when he was in prison?
No.
What prompted you to go see him in prison?
What prompted me to go and visit him and talk to him was that I knew it would be an opportunity to speak to him when he was straight. Yeah. He wasn't completely straight, but I mean not on illicit substances. And I wanted to give him an opportunity to apologise.
Yep.
Now looking back, I don't need the apology. I was a lot younger then too. So I give him an opportunity to apologise, and also to say, you know what, if we run into each other in the street or in the traps and, I'm with someone else, you're with somebody else, things to be able to be civil.
Yeah.
And that didn't happen. He said he wasn't ready to apologise, and I said, that's fine, and I left. But I gave him that opportunity to, I don't know, close the book on that and leave some room for forgiveness and, that healing that comes with, that closure.
How long was he inside for?
After that, I didn't speak to him, so I'm not sure. But I think
Right.
it was a little bit of a period of time. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, it's tough. How long were you together for?
5 years.
It's a long time.
It is, yeah.
It's a relationship. So you had that closeness there to start with.
And
Obviously.
even on a human level, you don't like to see anybody in
Yeah.
that kind of situation.
Once you broke away from him, did you break away from the bikie scene?
With that, I started dating Dean, but I started dating Dean because I knew he was somebody that could protect me, and I couldn't rely
Yeah.
on the police to protect me. Like I said, things were more dealt with in-house, and the police were aware of the fact that there was abuse in my
Yeah.
home, and they tried to leverage that in a way that they said, if you give us information about A, B, C, D, then we'll help to protect you. Otherwise, we're not interested. And I thought, I won't say what I thought, but
I think that's sort of hinting at where but it gets a lot worse. But with the fuck the police tattoo, but
I didn't have it then. I should have.
But it's saying that. So I suppose the police. I'm not defending it, and we try to leave partners out of. If you're going after someone, you tend to leave the partners out. But I suppose from their point of view, they're looking. Well, the crimes he's in. You want us to help you, and that's what they were trying to leverage, was it? We'll save you from him if you give him up.
But that's a farce. They wouldn't have been able to save me from him. That's the whole point, So you have to just deal with these things yourself if you're in a situation like I was. Not recommending anyone does that, but for me, that was my best chance of survival and keeping myself safe was to date somebody that I knew he wouldn't want to, come up against or mess with, basically.
Well, I suppose, and you said you understood the code of the bikies, and you don't speak to police, and you respected that and didn't, and that's probably the environment you've grown up with. Yuri's attitude.
Yes,
I'm sure
correct.
he wasn't one that liked speaking to police.
No.
No.
Have you gotten to the scene in the book where the police come to the house and he answers the door naked?
Yeah.
Did that make you smile, Gary?
It makes me smile, but I've been confronted with that before. And
I bet you have.
Yeah, and that is a real fuck you, police. I'm not even putting clothes on to
my
answer
house.
the door to you.
I'm not putting my pants on.
What do you want? With Yuri, the decline, and I know it impacted on you. With the alcohol, the dependence, and seeing him go from this strong, successful man to becoming, someone that was hiding his drinks, and I think you found him on a bus shelter without shoes on and brought him home and different things like that. That must be hard for a child.
Oh, very, extremely. And I don't think that there's any real words to describe how painful that emotion is. And there's a lot of people who have addictions that are highly intelligent. They're brilliant people. They've got great personalities. They have such good things going for them. It's just that coping mechanism is not there, and that pain is so strong.
Yeah.
So it's not a reflection on them as people. It's just an illness that needs to be treated, and I started to realise that as I got older.
You saw it. Okay, we might take a break at this stage. We're going to when we come back, we're going to talk about, you've decided to go into the relationship with Dean. Mm-hmm. We want to talk about your experiences dating the straighty 180s in the interim period.
Dean Block, here he is.
Come on, be nice to the good guys. And also, and I make light of this, but it was a horrific situation that you found yourself in, and you got to accept blame. You're living the lifestyle, but the extremes of being involved in a tactical arrest where stun grenades were thrown in, multiple stun grenades thrown into your bedroom, and you suffered very serious injuries to the point where you might have lost your hand.
Yeah, and almost lost my eyesight as well.
Yeah. No, I've seen photos of it. So that would be very, very traumatic. But we're going to talk all through that and what you're doing now with your life, and how you're sort of trying to turn it around and point it in the right direction.
Okay, sounds good.